We'll get going. So just welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is, I guess, part 4 in our Lawson Foundation learning series under the Child and Youth Diabetes Strategy. Just want to recognize, I think all of my Lawson colleagues are joining us today, as well as a number of friends and colleagues from around the network. And today we have Kathleen Bluesky and Jolene Mercer from Wiiji'idiwag Ikwewag joining us, talking about Indigenous Birth Helpers. I won't do much of an introduction and allow them to speak for themselves. So away we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our session. My name is Jolene Mercer. I'm the chairperson and co-founder, and happy to be here today and presenting to you. So thank you, Jeff, for reaching out to us. We really appreciate it. I'm a Anishinaabe from Peguis First Nation in Manitoba, living in the city of Winnipeg, and I'm a mother to 4 and a grandmother to 2.
Perfect. Danse bonjour. My name is Kathleen Bluesky, and I'm going to introduce myself in my language. Wawate masqua esquel esedigasun mehigan intutem nishiwayasik uchinida. So I come from the Nishiwayasik Cree Nation and Minnegotsby Anishinaabe. And I am also a co-founder of Wiiji'idiwag Ikwewag, and currently principal trainer, and so I do some work with Lorraine, our executive director.
Great. So I'm just going to share my screen.
Okay, so I'm gonna kick off the presentation, and Jolene Mercer is our former executive director. So she is actually, the one who really led a lot of the implementation of the work that we're going to be talking about. And so I'm just going to give a little bit of context to the history of how we started.
Oh, now it's not changing screens.
Wait, no, just
okay.
So Wiiji'idiwag Ikwewag, it means women helping each other. And our vision is to leave a footprint with communities so they may create their own path for empowered families connected to their Indigenous language, culture, and identity throughout the journey of pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and beyond. So what we've really talked about is from the beginning, Jolene and I, we did a lot of work in health policy, First Nations health, working with intergovernmental relationships with the province, with the federal government. And we really did see a gap in providing more of, the preventative approaches and investments when it came to health and well-being. And so as part of that, her and I, we led a number of engagements with, we called them grandmother gatherings. It was with our elders and our grandmothers from across Manitoba, and some from Ontario as well. And in those gatherings, which I think was over the course of about 5 or 6 years, we started to really see a trend in what they were saying to us. And the key message was that we have to go back to the beginning. And not so much did they tell us that we had to do birth work, but we had to go back to the beginning of when does good health start? And for us, we realized that it really does start, preconception, and that having a healthy pregnancy really does set the pathway for a woman, especially to take responsibility for her own well-being and for the well-being of her children. And so for us, that was a really important time in a woman's life for us to provide support. And that's how we came up with Wiiji'idiwag Ikwewag. And really what we do is we facilitate circles of women to come together and reclaim their roles as guardians. So we talk about the sacred bond between a mother and a baby. And, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the presentation. But for us, yes, we deliver a training. Training is probably not the best word for it, but we do facilitate the coming together of women in communities or in groups from different organizations. And we do provide some fundamental teachings that have been passed on to us as they relate to birth, and parenting and womanhood. But it really is the women in the circle who bring life to the teachings that they have carried, that have been passed on from their mothers, grandmothers, great grandmothers. And it's kind of like a spiritual awakening when we do this work. And people are really reminded of the teachings and the things that they observed in their younger days. And so that's the essence of what we do. So that Indigenous knowledge of going back to the beginning has to do with our creation stories. And every community, every nation has a creation story. The work we do is spirit-centered, so we honor the role of life givers. We have respect for the protocols, the Indigenous knowledge, and the traditional roles that women played in their communities, but that they play today. So when it comes to Indigenous families, the women are often they call them the rock of the family, but really the ones that keep things organized, the decision makers, and that really is our traditional system to be a matriarchal system. So what we do is we integrate cultural practice, bringing everything we do starts with spirit, starts with ceremony, starts with offerings. Our work is community centered and relationship based. So we really are advocating for reproductive justice in the sense of exercising sovereignty and self-determination in relation to how we give birth, but also the ceremonies and the traditions that we integrate into our birth journey and our parenting journey as well. Everything we do is strengths based. So we're all helpers. It's a circle of supportive helpers. And the core teaching that we receive from the grandmothers is that as women, we have to have unquestionable confidence in who we are as First Nations women. And when we facilitate these circles in community, that really is our ultimate goal, is to facilitate bringing alive that unquestionable confidence, because every woman carries it. And we do that by being intentional in the work that we do and by holding the space for the women in the circles that we share. So all of this work really does restore hope. What we've witnessed with women is that it's empowering and it's self-empowering. So we really teach women to become birth helpers, but in general, we teach women that we heal ourselves. No one is going to come and heal us. We do that through our own relationship with spirit. And then really we are trying to inspire change. And it started out kind of as an effort to change what health looks like, or the health systems look like for First Nations people. But I think we're really inspiring change on a number of levels, and we'll talk about some of the different projects. Jolene will share some of the different projects that she's led that has really inspired change. So as I mentioned, our foundational teachings from the Nokumuk was to go back to the beginning. So when we talk about going back to the beginning, we talk about the first rites of passage, and that's that transition from the spirit world to the physical world. And this is a core teaching, and just want to make sure you can hear me. Sorry about that. So one of the things we teach about is the impact of colonization on the well-being of women. And so I'm not going to go in depth into the slide, but one of the things we really connect is to how colonization has resulted in a lot of gaps in well-being. So when we talk about poverty, decreased access to housing, nutritious food, and education, it has a ripple effect when it comes to social determinants of health. And it creates a lot of social issues that we are often faced with at the community level. And it has also led to a lot of apprehension of children by Child and Family Services and incidents of domestic violence. And we know that because of the high rates of missing and murdered women. And all of these things in general really contribute to poor health outcomes and unmet needs for all Indigenous people, so not just women. So everything is really interconnected. It goes back to colonization. It goes back to internalized oppression and the oppressive policies, many of which still exist. So we're still facing a lot of these things, and we're just trying to find how can we build grassroots solutions to work our way out of this really dysfunctional system and work towards more holistic systems that support well-being. So how this work really started, we had been working on it since 2010. And then in 2018, we created Wiiji'idiwag Ikwewag in 2016, I believe. And then in 2018, we partnered with Winnipeg Boldness to develop a prototype for Indigenous doula training, we called it at the time. We've really moved away from using that term because it's far more expansive than just a doula. But in the initial project, we did curriculum development and we did validation with our grandmothers. So we brought our curriculum to the grandmothers and asked them for their input, and we asked them for their blessings to do this work. We did a training prototype in one neighborhood in Winnipeg, and we worked with Mount Carmel Clinic to implement the prototype. And then we also did an evaluation of that work. So based on that, we provided a service delivery prototype and an evaluation. And then that led to securing additional partnerships. So we really wanted to scale up because we did work with one neighborhood. We worked with 36 families, and we wanted to scale up. We wanted to work with more families because what we witnessed in this initial project was that it had tremendous impact on the well-being of mom, but also the well-being of their baby. And it was then that we really recognized that in 2 of the 36 families, we actually were able to prevent Child and Family Services from becoming involved with that family. And we provided ongoing support to ensure that, we kept that family together. And that was really what inspired the work for restoring the sacred bond. So we have a 1-week curriculum and a mentorship model. And for that project, we trained our first 12 Indigenous birth helpers, and they served families in the Point Douglas area of Winnipeg. So since that time, we've trained multiple groups of birth helpers in different communities. So Nisitchwe Cree Nation, Pimachikama Cree Nation, Mississippiwastic Cree Nation. We've also done training in Winnipeg. We've done training with our research teams that we've worked with. And then we also had our full-time birth helpers that worked with Wiiji'idiwag Ikwewag in Winnipeg, working with all the Southern First Nations. So a lot of training over the years. And in our training, we call it the Sacred Circle of New Life Training. And we really focus on traditional women's teachings, Indigenous childbirth teachings, parenting teachings, and any other knowledge or awareness or experience that comes up in our facilitated circles that support our Indigenous women and families in a traditional way. So the first 2 days of our training is focused on healing. So we talk a lot about the history, but we also talk about how do we heal from that. And the reason we do that is because we've learned from our own experience that you have to be well to help others become well. And so we've had to do a lot of trauma work ourselves. And in our training, we never take people down a path we haven't been on ourselves. And that's one of our fundamental principles of the work that we do. So we do integrate different teachings about ceremonies, education, protocols, and then we also do some of the work. We teach people some of the tools that we use in healing as well. So in revitalizing our knowledge, one of the teachings that we were given was that all Indigenous women are midwives. We all know how to listen to our bodies. We all know how to give birth. And, you know, that knowledge has been interrupted by systems of fear, systems of coercion. So when I talk about that, I mean that women don't give birth in their communities anymore because we've had this evacuation policy for a number of years that really is rooted in liability. It's rooted in risk. And so I know in one of our communities that we work with, one of our moms in the community wanted to give birth at home. And FNIB had one of their employees, I don't know if it was a nurse, I think it was a nurse, but she had to track down this mom and get her to sign a waiver of liability saying that she wouldn't hold Health Canada liable if anything happened to her or her baby by having this baby at home. So really, you know, instilled immense fear in her, and she ended up evacuating or going out for confinement, as they call it, to have her baby in the hospital. So in revitalizing our knowledge, we really talk about the spiritual foundation because we have to prepare ourselves to provide holistic support for emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental well-being. And that spiritual foundation starts with us as helpers. So we have to have a strong spiritual foundation. We have to do our own healing work in order to be a support to others, in order for women to help others. That's what we have to do. And then we talk about the life giver bundle, which is the womb of the woman. We all carry a bundle, and that's our life giver bundle. And women are in their most sacred space when they're with child. So this is where we begin to restore and protect the sacred bond. And then we talk about the birthing bundle. So it's preparing our bundle for the first rite of passage, which is that transition, as I mentioned, from the spirit realm to the physical realm. And it begins with the flow of the sacred birth water. So it's the most sacred water that we have is the water that brings life. And then after that first rite of passage, we focus on the new life bundle. So the new life bundle is really honoring the sacredness of children in general. We, you know, and I'm sure many of you have heard that one of our core teachings is that children are a gift from Creator. And so we really talk about how do we honor that. So in working with our women, we work with them to, you know, to decide, and it's all self-determined whether they want to do this or not. But we do offer that they get their baby named with a traditional Anishinaabe, Cree, or Ojibwe name, honoring that new life with songs at the birth, honoring that new life with ceremony. So there's different types of ceremonies, such as the placenta ceremony, the belly button ceremony, and then also with the teachings around breastfeeding. So we look at breastfeeding as medicine, and we talk about really the magical powers of breast milk, and how this can help how this can help babies in their first days, months, and years of life. So that's essentially what we do in the training. So Jolene's going to talk about the work that we've done in the different projects.
Yep. So, excuse me. So in the projects that we've done, this presentation is going to focus on one specific project, and that is a project that Lawson Foundation supported. And so, however, in all of our projects, we've trained our birth helpers and provided that holistic pregnancy, birthing, and postpartum supports to women and their families. So we quickly recognize that it's not just the women that needed the support, but everybody who's a part of that family. So it could be their partner, maybe they're still living at home with their parents or their mom. And so our training really looks at, and the support that we provide it includes the whole family. So like Kathleen mentioned, we provide culturally rooted teachings and practices that build confidence in the women and really restore the traditional birth practices. So bringing in the medicines, the teas that women would have traditionally drank, talking about those sacred family bonds, talking about healthy relationships and what they look like. And we also recognize that each family situation is unique. And so it's not a one size fits all situation. And so we work with the families to determine what they want their birthing experience to look like, what they want the support that we provide to look like. And so it really honors their personal values and beliefs as a family. So restoring the sacred bond, like I mentioned, was a project that we had worked on. And this project was a partnership between us and the Southern First Nation Network of Care. We matched Indigenous expectant mothers to Indigenous birth helpers. So they partnered together, and we say partnership because it really was a partnership. The birth helper could not do all the work. They just were able to facilitate the ceremonies, the teachings, as well as really help them to navigate all the resources that are out there. So there are a number of resources that are available here in Winnipeg. However, not all moms know that they're available, or they're unsure or shy to access those resources for many different reasons. And a big one is actually the fear of judgment, or having been judged in the past around whatever their life experiences are, their situation is in their life with accessing prenatal care. And so, yeah, we partnered in the initiative. So the purpose of it was to provide early intervention to reduce admissions to care, increase the rate and timeliness of reunification, as well as identify family or community who could provide lifelong care when reunification was not possible. So a big part of it was the prenatal case management. So we looked at identifying areas of concern. So this was done with the families, as well as working with the CFS agencies to identify any areas of concerns. And then from that, we assisted families to identify their priority areas. So this goes back to providing trauma-informed, non-judgmental care. And so we asked them, identify what your priority is. So we talked about things. We have an exercise that we do where we work with family. Well, first off, they do a self-assessment. Mm-hmm. So they complete a self-assessment. Where do they feel like they're at in terms of their mental well-being, their emotional well-being, their physical well-being, and their spiritual well-being? And then from there, we work with them to identify what they feel a healthy family is, or a successful family, and how does that look to them. And then we walk through what are the things that are preventing them from being a healthy family, or achieving what they think as success in a family area. And then they identify what their priority areas are. So what do they wish to address first? And so it was really interesting for us because when you think from I'm not a clinician, but I have worked in health. So when you think from a health perspective, the things that you would probably think of first is if there was addictions that they would want to go to treatment, or if there was food insecurity that they would, want to do something about that. However, the majority of women and families in the program really wanted a safe place to live, that they were comfortable in. And so for most of the families we worked with, that was the number one thing that we did. And they stated that all of the other stuff didn't matter if they didn't have some place that they felt safe and comfortable in as a home.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, we developed a support plan with the families on how it would look. So what types of things did they want us to assist them with, and around their priority areas. And so we created some goals in there. They identified their goals, and we worked to help them achieve those goals. And of course, connecting families to the community resources that were available.
I have a question. Which communities do you mostly work with?
So we worked for this particular project. We worked with all of the communities in that fall under the Southern Authority. So I guess 36 communities. The majority. Oh, sorry.
It doesn't come to the north, or are you working on that?
We are doing projects in the north. So right now we currently have 4 birth helpers working out of the Thompson General Hospital. So they provide support to women. So once they leave the community for confinement or evacuation, all the crazy language that they use, once they leave the community to give birth, then they can be supported in Thompson. Mm-hmm. We've also worked with NCN, and they had trained birth helpers there. So we did a project with NCN, Cross Lake, and Grand Rapids for a number of years, probably 3 years on those projects. Mm-hmm. So we were looking at the impact of Indigenous birth helpers on health outcomes for women who have to travel for birth. So those results, I think, are available already.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, the pre-results.
Yeah. So Grand Rapids is now running their own birth helper program.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So they still have birth helpers that they employ in their community. And NCN is their birth helpers do work kind of at the request of families. And then the families find a way through either through Jordan's Principle or through health or through prenatal to support that. But they are working at a longer term strategy in NCN as well. And Cross Lake, they're in the same situation.
Yeah, I was asking for my community, Chimoan.
Oh, okay.
Maybe we can start up something on that, on this area.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So we have some contact information at the end of this presentation. So if any communities or any organizations are interested in bringing this training to their community, then they can contact us and we can make arrangements for that. We trained a number of birth helpers from many communities with the Athabasca Tribal Council. Mm-hmm. So we did that. It's a long time already, almost 2 years ago. Yeah. Time flies by, almost 2 years ago. And
during COVID.
To build similar programs within their tribal council areas.
Is this online or is it hands-on, like a person?
It's hands-on. We did try to offer it online. It really does not have the same experience. Yeah. And it's because we do so many cultural teachings in the beginning. And part of that is learning how to prepare some of the medicines. And so that's really important because we bring all the supplies and stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So in terms of prenatal support, We provide the cultural teachings and traditions to expectant families. We share knowledge about pregnancy, birth, breast and safe breastfeeding, and traditional prenatal care. And we work with them to identify pregnancy and birth goals and developing a birth plan that's right for that expectant family. And then prenatal support, not sure why it says is provided one-on-one or in a group setting. So some of the birth helpers will do prenatal classes, so where they bring families together. And there's a lot of stuff goes into that. So like I mentioned, we prepare prenatal teas and postpartum teas. So these are things that would build your blood and really get your body ready to give birth, providing the things that your body needs that maybe you're not getting day to day, as well as we talk about the importance of the foods that you eat. And so this is where it really ties into that diabetes prevention, is working with moms to make good food choices. We talk about things like the basic shelf. So looking at healthy foods that you can prepare on a budget and what does that look like. And then also doing things like we teach our birth helpers how to make liver capsules. So not everybody likes to eat liver. And so we can actually dehydrate that liver, make the capsules. And then just really talking about how even eating 2 to 3 ounces of liver in a week really impacts the health outcomes of the baby. So lots of different things like that around food security and prenatal nutrition are talked about and taught. Yeah, next slide. And then, of course, the labor, delivery, and birth support. So we met with families to discuss the pregnancy, birth goals, and what families want to do immediately after baby is born. And so what we mean about immediately after baby is born is that the teachings that we received is that it's extremely important for that baby to be connected to the physical world and to really be acknowledging the journey that they just came through. And so we work with families to identify if there's a song that they would like to sing once baby's born, or a prayer that they would like to say, or any welcoming or words that like to be said. We connect them with language speakers so that they can learn how to say those things in the language. That's where the teaching comes from, that the first language that any baby that is born should hear is their own language. And so when we're in those hospital spaces, we just make sure that everybody who's in that space, the doctors, the nurses, know that unless it's an emergency, that the only person who should be talking is mom or the family or the partner or whoever they've identified. And then they do that welcoming, whether it's a song or a prayer or just something. And so we've gotten very good at bringing these traditional aspects of birthing into a hospital setting. So obviously not all hospitals you can smudge in. However, you know, we make different medicines that can be used and then they still have the smell, and we make sprays and things like that. So it becomes a very wonderful experience, and it's a very different experience than just giving birth. My niece's first baby, well, her only baby actually, was born at the birth center here in Winnipeg. There was 17 people there, which some people would say, wow, that's an extreme number of people. But it was the most beautiful experience for her to be surrounded by her grandmothers, her aunties, her sisters, her cousin sisters, and all of these people having and welcoming my nephew into the world. And he came out so alert and actually was looking around, and the energy in there was just very different. And so birth centers, wonderful birth, and bringing those types of things into a hospital birth as well, it's a very different experience. And attending a number of births, you can see that there's those connections. And that's what the grandmothers taught us about bringing all of these women around birthing. Those children feel those connections for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So after the baby is born, we continue to provide postpartum support. So that ongoing emotional and physical support, assisting with breastfeeding and bottle feeding support and information. And then of course, the pros and cons to that, as well as the nutritional and health benefits of breastfeeding. So we already know what a wonderful gift it is to be able to breastfeed your baby. However, we also recognize that that's not the choice of everybody. And so we really work on those safe feeding information. And we work with the moms on self-care and healing. So a lot of our families really live in a crisis mode. They don't necessarily have the family support. And so they're doing everything right after giving birth and going into their home. And so we really work with them and their circle of support so that the mom can be cared for and take that time to heal, because it is a huge physical experience. And, sometimes there's trauma to the body as well. So we really focus on that self-care and healing and those family supports and community resources. And then, of course, as Kathleen mentioned, ceremonies such as the placenta ceremony and the naming ceremony as the family requests it, and then continued liaison and advocacy support. So this part is really important, especially working through restoring the sacred bond. We know that the first year of life is the most important time for bonding. And we also know that it's really important that mom and baby stay together, or if there is an apprehension, are reunified within that first year of life. And the reason for that is that research shows that if mom does not have care of her child at 1 year of life, it's highly likely that that child will stay within the system until they age out. So it's a huge preventative piece of the work that we do.
Or even sometimes the mom doesn't produce enough milk.
For sure. And so we recognize all of those things. So if a mom really wants to breastfeed, we'll get her the support that she needs to do whatever can be done. But we do recognize that sometimes moms don't produce enough milk. There's lots of other things. There's sexual trauma that might be preventing moms. There's domestic violence. There's all kinds of things. So it's a personal choice. And we work with families to identify whatever it is their personal choice is, and we support them through it. So our motto really is fed is best. And what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
So just a couple quotes here from the families or the moms that we worked with, just stating it's like a crisis intervention, a support worker, mobile crisis, so many things in one, a therapist, kind of a mediator at times. And then, these are from the birth helpers. And so we have amazing birth helpers, and they really go above and beyond. And that was our dream when we created this program, that they would build lifelong connections. So we're more like being their relative as opposed to, just being a worker for them. And so another part of what happened through the Restoring the Sacred Bond is that many of the moms in our program already had children who were in care. And so a number of reunifications happened after we were working with them. And they happened fairly quickly once they had those supports in place, once they had a safe place to live. And so we were super excited. And it didn't get counted in our results, unfortunately, but we did have, I think it was about 15 reunifications that occurred. And so we were really ecstatic that we were able to play a role in that mom to assist her in regaining care of her children. So some of the key findings were that women referred to restoring the sacred bond tended to have more risk factors than other women that were usually involved with the CFS authority. And so the women that we worked with had numerous risk factors and were also at their most vulnerable time. And so it was very challenging at times, especially because we had just started our program and then we had COVID. And so we couldn't provide the support in the way that we saw it being provided. So in the program design, there was a lot of, interactions, one-on-one, a lot of group work, a lot of coming together for ceremonies. And obviously that didn't happen for the majority of our programs. So where we could, we got knowledge keepers to come and do teachings online, but it's definitely a very different experience. So children born to mothers enrolled in Restoring the Sacred Bond had a lower chance of being taken into care. So they actually had to change the evaluation methodology that they were originally going to use, because that methodology didn't take into consideration that children just wouldn't be going into care at all. It was looking at a reduction of days care. And so they had to change it so that it could capture the fact that a number of children did not go into care. So 24.5% of children in the program were taken into care in the first year of life, compared to 35.1% of the children in the care group. The modeling showed 29 fewer days in care among the program group than the control group. So with that, we always have a caveat with that, because we had a number of moms that came into the program whose children were already in care, but they fell within that first year of life. And so we were working with them on a reunification. We also had a number of moms that came into the program within the last month, or even we had somebody who came into the program the day that she gave birth. And so there were already apprehensions in place at that time. And then we worked with them for reunification. So that really skewed our data. There was no, the evaluation didn't take into consideration at what point in the pregnancy the moms entered into the program. So, and then here's just some other things, and it has to do with the number of moms in the program. Like I said, it had to do, there was COVID during the time, so we didn't get the number of uptake that we had originally thought that we would. In all the interviews, or in interviews, all the participants said the program provided a positive and supportive experience, and that was responsive to their family needs, and participants enhanced well-being through connections to Indigenous culture and identity, health services, addictions treatment, school and work opportunities, and basic needs, and then a strengthened connection to children and positive social support networks. So this was a really big piece. And when I said our birth helpers went above and beyond, they really did. 3 o'clock in the morning, our on-call phone, there was a domestic situation. So whoever was on call would go and be in attendance there. And sometimes it wasn't, maybe it was an argument and the mom didn't feel safe at the time, but it wasn't a point where she felt like she needed to get police involved. So the birth helper would go, mom would go and they would take her someplace else. And we built really good community connections that were super responsive to the needs of our moms. And so moms in our program were going to the top of housing lists. They were, going to the top of the list in addictions treatment. We had partnerships with different hotels in the community that were willing to put our moms for free up in their hotels. So lots of partnerships. We did lots of outreach work, and all of that really contributed to the success of the program. So overall, we had a really good success rate, considering that we were operating under the pandemic conditions. So one of the participants said that her birth helper made her feel safe. She didn't have to worry about her daughter being taken away. So somebody wasn't just going to come and grab her in that sense. And she didn't have any fear when she asked for help. So a lot of moms who have lost their kids will not reach out because they're scared. So they won't ask for help from CFS because they are scared. So even though CFS does do prevention work, the majority of the moms that we worked with would not reach out at all to access those prevention services. And there's lots of different reasons why, but they really fully believe that if they reached out for that help from CFS, that would trigger CFS to put them on a birth alert and then apprehend their child. And so we had a lot of work to do around trust building because it was a partnership. We were housed with a Southern First Nation network of care. And so a lot of trust building had to happen so that they would understand that we're not spies for CFS. We're not there to, try to gather information. We're really there to support the work that they're doing. And so we came from a strengths-based approach, and where most systems come from a deficit approach, including our health systems. And we really looked at what are their strengths and really brought their attention to just their resiliency as a woman, as a person, as a parent, and then focused on that. And that's what really led to the success of the program. So that's it for our presentation. This is Lorraine's contact information. She's the executive director. So if you want more information or excuse me, are interested in a training, you could contact Lorraine. So miigwech, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jolene and Kathleen, on behalf of Lawson and everybody participating. I guess we'll take some questions now. There's a few in the chat, and if anyone has them, you can write it in the chat or put up your hand on the Zoom there. Maybe if you want to keep Lorraine's email address up, because there's a lot of people asking if they can have a copy of the presentation. And I guess if you're okay with that, maybe they should email Lorraine about the presentation, or
Yeah.
And then okay. So that Lindsay asks, where can I find more on the placenta and belly button ceremony as well as birthing songs?
You will have to ask your knowledge keepers.
Yeah.
It really depends on where you're from, because birthing songs and ceremonies are specific. So Anishinaabe songs and ceremonies wouldn't necessarily be the same as Cree. So through our training, we do teach some of those things. And what one of the grandmothers, Sherry Copenis, that we work with from Anigaming, taught us is that it's okay to borrow things while you're seeking out your own.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the placenta ceremony, honestly, you could probably Google things and you would find stuff, but we really encourage you to talk to the women in your family and your community.
Yeah. And then just always, the passing of the tobacco is the protocol. Anytime you're asking for knowledge to be shared or teachings, just the passing of tobacco. And in fact, one of the things that we did is because, a lot of stuff that we wanted to know more about, we would just make offerings. So we would have full moon ceremonies and we make offerings and ask for those teachers to come to us, to find us, and that we can connect with them to get those teachings, to receive those songs. One person that does do the birthing songs is Doreen Day. But you have to assure her that you're not pregnant, because you can't teach the birthing song if you're pregnant.
Okay, thank you. Barb Niepanak asks, when is your next class in Winnipeg?
So we don't have classes really in that way. What we do is organizations will invite us out to do training.
Yeah.
So we train our own staff regularly. However, if an organization invites us out to train, we would train. We haven't had an open training for some time now. It's a lot of work to do the training, and Kathleen and I both have full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Very busy full-time jobs, but this is our passion work. So
yeah, so our plan for the next couple of years is really to get more trainers on board with Wiiji'idiwag, with our staff, with some of our experienced birth helpers. So that's our kind of next phase. so that we can really reach out and meet some of that demand out there, because there is a lot of demand now, which is great, because we need to be doing this work.
Okay, thanks. Milak from Cowichan says, I would love this is also Christine says that was a beautiful presentation, truly inspiring. I think I have an internet connection problem here. Lynn asks, would you come to New Brunswick to do a training?
Yeah, if you
Yes.
invite us out, we would definitely do it. And I absolutely love New Brunswick, so I'd be happy to go there.
Okay. Barb Niepanak says, I would like to get involved now that she's retired and she carries traditional teachings.
That would be amazing. So in all of our training, I forgot to mention this earlier, all of our training, we have grandmothers that are a part of the training. So when you invite us to your community, we work with you to identify who a grandmother from your community might be that would come and participate in the training. So we're always looking for those beautiful grandmothers to come and share their knowledge and their teachings with us, as well as our birth helpers.
Another question about the placenta and belly button ceremony and birthing songs, but I think you addressed that. Unless you want to repeat it.
Yeah, so not everybody has like a placenta ceremony. So not every belief system has something. Well, maybe they all have something around the placenta, but it's not all the same. So for us, like Anishinaabe, we keep that placenta and we bury it. And so we pray with that placenta before we're putting it into the ground. It's wrapped in cloth with tobacco. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. And then, you know, it's so that that child is always connected to the land. And so that's why we do it. And then they can look different for all kinds of groups. But one of the things that we always talk about is, even if you don't have those teachings, like just do what your heart is telling you to do. So while you're learning, you just have to do what your heart is telling you to do. So like before we had these teachings, I participated in a placenta ceremony, and let me tell you, it was a lot different than it is now, because none of us knew what to do. And so it was kind of like, oh, we're just going to put this in the ground. Like, it wasn't wrapped in cloth. It wasn't anything, but our hearts were in the right place. And, you know, and our good energy and our positive thoughts for that baby. And so really you can do whatever you feel is best.
Okay, thanks. Just a couple more. Christine asks, have you thought about how to meet the increasing interest demand for training in your model as word spreads across the country?
Yeah, so we are working on a training for trainers. That is going to take us probably you know, the next 24 months before it would actually roll out. But we are definitely working on that to scale up and provide, you know, more support to communities and organizations who are interested in leading this work for themselves, for their own people that they serve.
Okay, thanks. Shelley adds that First Nations University in Saskatchewan has a training course available, and that Meadow Lake has recently had 6 graduates. And then Monique asks, are there ceremonies for stillbirth?
Yeah.
Yes, we do have a component of grief and loss in the training. But we're actually working on creating a separate module just for that, because it is a big piece of a lot of the training that we've done has really it opens up some of those, you know, that suppressed grief, and allows a safe place for women and birth helpers to express, you know, any kind of loss or how to deal with loss, because it's not something that people are comfortable with. So we've recognized the importance of that, and that's something that we're also working on.
Okay, great. Other than that, a bunch of miigwech and thanks in the message there in the chat. And again, thank you, Jolene and Kathleen, for presenting this and sharing with all of us, and for everybody participating today. And hope you all have a great day, and keep an eye out for our next session that'll be coming up in November.
Sounds
Great.
good. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye.